Today, Amanda Tackett. I have a guest, Joy Wellman. She is at BB&T with me, shares our mortgage lender. Her office is at Rocky Hill, so welcome. That's the only guest we have. We do have some visiting Rotarians. John Dempster from the Downtown Club. And Justin Lyons. He's with Ray Fisher today. Is he a guest?
Enterprise, third visit.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you, Amanda. Now, hold on to your seats. Oliver's got some humor today, so all right. A lot of support there, Oliver.
All right, since we know we're going to have a crushing defeat of the Gators tomorrow, who's going to the Florida game? Anybody here going to the Florida game? I'm glad that you're supporting the ball so heavily. It makes me feel good. So what made me think of this was all the SEC teams that we're going to be playing. So I've kind of done a joke for each segment of this fine country in our SEC conference. So let's start off with Roger's favorite, Alabama. So who is the poorest person in Alabama? The tooth fairy. So next we'll start out with Georgia. I know we've got a couple of Georgia grads in here. A buddy of mine that was a Georgia grad was bragging about his recent golf game. He was so proud that he missed his first hole and won by only 5 strokes. Now think about that one. Yeah, I think he was in the engineering department. So, Vanderbilt. You know, Nashville is exploding with growth and money, new money coming in. We were just talking about that back there at the table. And a recent Vandy grad put his education to work and became an investment advisor, like some of the guys here in the club. The first big push, he called one of my buddies, and he was wanting him to heavily invest in the newest Mexican phone company, Taco Bell. It's a good investment. Don't miss that one. All right, Arkansas. You know, when OJ gets out of prison, I don't know how long that's going to be, but I'd say it'll be a while, his attorneys have advised the judge that he plans to move to Arkansas. He said OJ heard in prison that everyone in Arkansas has the same DNA. Come on. Push it through. All right, South Carolina. What does it say on the back of every South Carolina diploma? Does anybody know that? It's not Latin. It says, we'll work for food. That's a valuable diploma, isn't it? All right, and our last, not least, tomorrow's Gators, Florida. What's the difference between a Florida Gator fan and a carp? One is a bottom-feeding scumsucker and the other's a fish. All right, that's it.
That was great. Thank you, Oliver. Dick, if you would give us an update on Pond Gap, please. Dick Hinton. There you are, Dick. Sorry, I tried to catch you when you had a bite of food in your mouth.
Readers today were me, Gary McCarty, Dave Bloom, and no wait, I take that back, I'm the wrong week. Stuart Anderson. Gosh, anyway, I was gone last week, and there is a new revised one of these going around, so I need for y'all to sign up, and we'll get it on the sheet that we're going forward. So sign up for Pond Gap Reading.
Okay, thanks, buddy. Janice, if you could give us an update on mobile bills, please.
Jason Fields delivered mobile meals for us today. Next week is the first Friday of the month, and our tab 4 will be delivering. And if I can just take a moment, Lila, we have a student going to Lila tomorrow. Her name is Shemaya Green, and I'll be taking her, and then she'll come back and talk to us about her experiences.
Thank you, Janice. And I know you worked it's real hard to, early in the school year to get that lined up for Ryland. That's an excellent program. It's Rotary Youth Leadership Academy, I think is what, but it's really a great experience for high school juniors. And it'll be interesting to hear from her when she gets back. Thank you very much. Also, we probably have a flu shot Saturday. Charlie, or you got to pass it around the sheet.
Thanks, Stuart had a deal. I did not pass them around today, but get with me before the end of the meeting if you'd like to come. We need 2 or 3 more people. Michael Horn just jumped on board. It's going to be good. It's really fairly easy to come. If you don't want to get up real early and come, you can come 8 or 9 o'clock. They're going to start at 7. We're going to be there at 6 or 6:30. But we can use some people around the 9 o'clock session if you don't want to get up too early. Because that's, the rain may hold them off a little bit, but we get real busy between like 9 and 11. Okay?
Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, please sign. That's a lot of fun.
Tomorrow West High School, actually, it's pretty good for Rotary. We get them.
Yeah, it's great. Get a makeup, get to see your fellow Rotarians, get some, I think, chicken minis and coffee, and thanks to Mike and Dick Hinton, donuts.
Donuts and a flu shot.
And a flu shot. Can't beat that. Saturday morning. What a way to wake up. But it is a lot of fun, and it's better to have too many folks there than not enough. Because it's help. We can use the help. And plus, I always like to collect money. That's the fun part. Get to meet a lot of the folks in line and hit them up for $1 or $2 on the way through for the empty stocking fund. Well, with that, we've got a fantastic program scheduled today, and Rogers Penfield is going to introduce our guest speaker. And I'd like to thank Roger, and if you would please, No Alabama.
Well, I want to say I'm happy to see Roy DeAttaker is back with us. And up until about 1 a.m. Sunday morning, I was going to ask Roy. I had heard that Auburn was going to put Jacksonville State on a home-and-home schedule. But then I changed my mind about 12:47 a.m. Sunday morning. Jimmy Hymes moved to Knoxville from Baton Rouge, Louisiana in the summer of 1985, looking for a fresh start in his journalism career, and found a job as a sports writer with the Knoxville News. The only person to win both the Tennessee Sportscaster and Sports Writer of the Year award is our speaker today. He was born in Natchitoches. Everybody knows where Natchitoches is, and seemed destined for a career in journalism at a young age. As a 12-year-old 8th grader at St. Mary's High School, Hymes was an all-district varsity shortstop, part-time starter on the varsity basketball team. After transferring to Natchitoches High School as a freshman, he lettered in football, baseball, basketball, and track and field before focusing on baseball. Hymes was in the newspaper business at an early age. At the age of 13, he started writing for the Natchitoches Times. At age 16, he began attending the high school. And from there on, he worked in the editorial department of the newspapers. And because he was still playing baseball, it was getting to be a little time consuming, so he gave up baseball. He interviewed at the News Sentinel after being interviewed at a paper in Birmingham and found that this was a better place, because just like many of us, once you've come to Knoxville, you want to stay here all your life. Well, he's won over 25 writing awards and is the only person that we can identify that's won both the Broadcaster of the Year in sports and the Journalist of the Year in sports. Without further ado, it's a privilege to introduce my friend and our voice, Mr. Jimmy Hymes.
Actually, I got up early to get you off the podium. That's enough of that. Goodness gracious. And by the way, it's Natchitoches. It's Natchitoches, Louisiana. That's where I'm from. And they're so glad that I'm from there since I got out of there. And by the way, the reason I came to Knoxville, no offense, but it wasn't because I thought it was a better place. It's because they offered me a job. Birmingham didn't. So I thought I would take the job instead of the place that didn't offer me the job. I'm delighted to be here. I do want to check with the president, though. I'm not really sure why he did this to me, but he put me at a table where there's an Alabama fan, a fan of Youngstown State, which is where Bob Stoops is from, and then a bunch of guys that can't figure out what Tennessee's orange color is. Look at this. They're color coordinated, aren't they? They look great. I heard that Coach Majors was your speaker recent. I got to tell you a pretty good story on him. He joins us every Thursday during football season to talk about football and Tennessee football, SEC, whatever. And so I told him the other day we were going to be at the Alley, and the Alley's on Kingston Pike. I said, I'm sure you've been there before. It used to be Doc's All-American Grill. And he said, yeah, I've been there before. He said, I got a picture up there with me and my brother Bobby Majors. He said, is that picture still up there? I said, well, actually, when they changed ownership, they took the picture down. Well, then to hell with them. I said, are you still coming? Yeah, I'll be there. Dadgummit, I'll be there. So Coach Majors showed up. We were glad that he did. I want to talk to you about a number of things, and we'll start with this. I was, before the year, before football season starts, I've been writing for Lindy Sports Magazine and doing their SEC stuff for many years. About 6 years ago, they asked me to start calling a bunch of SEC coaches and to get them to talk to me where I can quote them but not identify who they are. And it's real interesting what some of them will say. And so that's what I've been doing. So I get a handful of coaches, and I wanted to share some of the things that they said about Tennessee, which I thought were pretty interesting. One of them said that I think Butch Jones has done a great job. He's recruited well. He's brought energy and enthusiasm to that program. But the one thing he needs to do is I'm not sure he's a good game day coach. That's what one of them said. Another one said they don't need to be 7-6 again. They need to get to 9 or 10 wins. They have not been relevant in the SEC East since 2007. There's some truth to that. Also, one quote said it'll come down to the play of the quarterback and the offensive line. He said what they do, though, with their scheme, the offensive line doesn't have to be great for them to be successful because they don't knock people off the ball. And that's true. That's what Tennessee's scheme is about. Another one said this: I think Alvin Kamara will have a great year at Tennessee. He was the 5th string running back at Alabama. He was a 5-star sitting on the bench at Alabama. He was impatient. He didn't like being lied to. Rogers, was that you that lied to him? He will be an impact player. The guy's got talent. He's the best running back at Tennessee. Jalen Hurd can't touch him. Wow, that's a heck of a comment. Now, so far that hadn't come to fruition, but we have seen that Alvin Kamara's got a chance to be a really special back. Another one said that as far as Tennessee taking that next step, he said it's a matter of taking that next step. You won a bowl game, that's great. The next few steps are a lot harder than the first steps, and we'll see if they can get there, but they are close. Another one was not complimentary of the coach that was at Tennessee before, Butch Jones. He said, Derek Dooley did a horrible job managing Tennessee's roster. Dooley's the one that really took that program to the bottom. That's what one coach had to say. So anyway, those were some of the comments from the coaches I thought were kind of interesting. By the way, I will tell you, I'm wearing this. It's WNML. We've been told now that when we go out in public, we're supposed to wear shirts with our emblem on it. We used to be the sports animal. We're no longer the sports animal.
We did away with that January the 1st, so we're now sports radio. And the reason we did away with it is because corporate, after 10 years, said that the sports animal was offensive to women. And so we're not going to be the sports animal anymore. How many women in here are offended by sports animal? I didn't know Caitlyn Jenner was in the audience. So there were no women that were offended, true women. I thought, anyway, we kind of thought it was silly, but that's what corporate made us do. So that's the direction we've gone. As everybody knows, Tennessee's lost to Florida 10 years in a row. Tennessee, that's the second longest losing streak Tennessee has to any opponent. Alabama won 11 in a row from 71 to 81. And so I went and looked up the numbers about how good has Florida been during this stretch, how good was Alabama during that stretch. Alabama was a lot better, Those Alabama teams, they won 116 games. Alabama during this 10-game stretch has won 94. Alabama won 2 national championships, and Florida won 2. The difference is Alabama won 9 SEC championships during that stretch, and Florida's won 2 SEC championships. The worst Alabama team during that stretch went 9-3. 10 of those teams lost 2 or fewer games. Florida's had 4 teams that have lost 5 games, and they had a 4-8 season. And so there's been a significant difference as to how good they were. Now Florida's been pretty good, but the last 2 years Tennessee's been better and hasn't, in my opinion, hadn't won a football game. Should have won it last year, should have won the year before in Florida. They've not been able to get over the hump, and that's going to be the key. We'll see if they're able to get that done this weekend at Florida. A few other things I want to touch on is, it's kind of intriguing to me, but when I look around the SEC, there's some offenses out there that aren't very good. Florida's is one of them. Last weekend, there were 5 SEC teams that gained fewer than 275 yards total offense. And Florida and Kentucky were 2 of them, because neither one of them got there. Missouri, which was absolutely awful against Connecticut, they won the game, but they were terrible. They had a little over 200 yards. And then Auburn, which has been the most disappointing team in the league, had less than 250 yards against LSU. And then South Carolina was not very good against Georgia. They had less than 275 in that game. And some of that, a lot of that has to do with quarterback play. And of course, the biggest bust in the league has been Jeremy Johnson. I kind of bought in because the head coach at Auburn told me how good he was. Well, Jeremy Johnson's so good, he's not starting the next week, so this week. So they've struggled from that standpoint, but it's kind of interesting. The league will play itself out. It was interesting, and I'll touch on this a little bit too with this. I was surprised Alabama lost Ole Miss. Alabama ran 100 plays from the line of scrimmage, 100, and lost the game. They had a 5-0 turnover margin deficit and lost the game. It's hard to beat anybody when you do that. And yet they were still there, just a touchdown behind late in that game with a chance to win it. The good news for the Alabama fans, for Roger, the last time Ole Miss beat Alabama, Alabama went on to win the SEC. And that was last year. So the season's not over for Alabama. It's not over for anybody that loses early. But we'll see what transpires going down the road here. A few other things I wanted to touch on as far as the East Division race. If Tennessee wants to make any noise in the East Division, if they want to be a contender, they have to beat Florida. I think they have to win this game. It's the biggest game in Butch Jones' career. He doesn't want to acknowledge that, but I think it's true. If you want to be an East contender, if you want to win 8 or 9 ball games, which is what their goal is, if you want to achieve the things that you hope to do before the season, you have to win this one. And this is going to be a key game for Tennessee. Whether or not they pull it out, I don't know, but I do think Tennessee's got the better team. And the thing you don't want to do from Tennessee's perspective, so you got a Florida coach in his first year. If he beats Tennessee, he's going to beat the Tennessee coach in his 3rd year. And I'm telling you, Florida offensively is just not very good right now. And this is a prime time for Tennessee to get them. Florida's offense wasn't any good last year either, and Tennessee wasn't able to get over the hump to beat them. So I think from Tennessee's perspective, did they learn some things from that Oklahoma game when they were not able to protect a 17-3 lead in the 4th quarter? Did they learn some things there that might help carry over to this game at Florida? We'll see. It is going to be a challenge, though, to beat them because Florida's defense is one of the 3 best in the SEC. They're really good on defense. They lead the league in run defense. They give up 55 yards per game. They're 2nd in the SEC in total defense allowed, points allowed, pass defense efficiency. So they're really good. So Tennessee's going to have to, offensively, they're going to have to be really sharp in this game if they want to beat Florida. We'll see if they can get that. Also, I get a kick out of this. There are a couple of coaching cliches that tickle me, and one of them is that you'll hear coaches all the time talk about how bulletin board material means nothing, that once that first snap that takes place, you forget about all that stuff. Well, let's talk about that. There was a player at Auburn last week. His name was Rudy Ford. He was asked if Leonard Fournette would be much of a challenge. Would it be challenging? And he said, "I don't think that's much of a challenge to stop Leonard Fournette." So Fournette ran for 228 yards. LSU beats the devil out of him. And late in that game, when Fournette's running down the field, Rudy Ford intentionally dodged him, wouldn't even hit him. And Leonard Fournette talked about that after the game. That stoked Leonard Fournette and that LSU team for that whole game, and I'm convinced that's one reason they blew out Auburn. You might remember this one that came up. I got a kick out of this one. Texas Tech and Arkansas. So the Arkansas head coach, Brett Bielema, goes into a Texas high school clinic during the summer and says, if you don't throw the football to your fullback, or if you if you throw 70 passes a game, we're going to beat your butt. Well, Texas Tech doesn't throw to the fullback, and they throw 70 times a game, and Texas Tech just beat Arkansas. So the Texas Tech coach was talking about how thrilled he was to beat Arkansas because of what Brett Bielema had said. The thing that was crazy about what Bielema said is that in the state of Texas, which Arkansas has to recruit to do well, 80 to 90% of those teams run the spread through football. So you're going to go into that state and you're going to talk about how that's not a good, it's almost like saying that's a sissy offense. So you're going to go to that state and criticize it, and yet those coaches are there, and so then you're going to go into their office and try to recruit their players after you've told them what you think of the spread. That's just dumb. But that's what he did. That's what he did. So, and I think Texas A&M is going to beat them too. I think Arkansas and Auburn are going to be the two most disappointing teams in the SEC this year. And when you talk about bulletin board material, I remember this a few years ago. Ole Miss had a quarterback named Bo Wallace. They're fixing to play Alabama. He said, we can score on anybody. We don't care who it is. We will score on anybody. Don't care. Alabama 25, Ole Miss 0. Alabama was ready for that. So there are a lot of cases where people insert foot in mouth and they end up paying for it on the football field. And and that's another reason you hear so many coaches try to make sure their players don't say things to ignite the opponent, because I think there's something to it. I don't believe the coaches that say this doesn't matter. I think it does matter. And a lot of times when I see people say that, step out of line, make comments like that, I'm picking the other team because I think it jacks them up. I really do, and I've seen plenty of evidence to that. A couple other things too, and this is not a very positive note about Tennessee, but I do think Butch Jones is going to get this program back where it wants to be and where it needs to be for Tennessee. He's recruited extremely well. I think they have a well-coached football team. But these are some numbers, and this has been tough for Tennessee. The last 36 times Tennessee's played against a ranked team, Tennessee's won twice against South Carolina. If you go back to 2002, the last 28 times Tennessee has played a ranked team at Neyland Stadium, which is supposed to be a great home field advantage, they won 6. They're 6-22 the last 28 games against a ranked team at home. They're fighting a little bit of that, can you get it done? Can you get over the hump? I think they will, and I think Butch Jones will do it. I'm just not sure when that's going to come. But I do think that with what he's been able to recruit, my goodness, they've got 4 four-star quarterbacks on their roster. They got a 4-star quarterback committed for next year and a 5-star quarterback committed for the year after that. Now, that's amazing. And I think the recruiting job they've done, given Tennessee's lack of success in recent years, has been pretty amazing. And I'm going to give a shout out also to the Tennessee fan base. I just mentioned to you earlier about how Tennessee has not done well against ranked opponents recently. Well, so Tennessee plays Oklahoma. It's an electric atmosphere. It's one of the greatest atmospheres I've seen in Neyland Stadium in the last 10 years. Tennessee loses a game. I'm thinking the next week against Western Carolina, there are going to be a lot of empty seats. There are going to be a lot of no-shows. That wasn't the case. Tennessee came within about 100 of selling it out. They had 102,000 tickets sold. And in the stadium, they must have had 100,000 fans there. And for a program that has struggled, to see them show up for the Western Carolina, even though they might have been wearing different shades of orange. They showed up, and I was really impressed with that. That kind of blew me away. It tells me how hungry these fans are to have success. They are ready to have success. And I also thought, I don't know how many of you made the Tax Slayer Bowl game. If you did, but that was a great scene for Tennessee. There were 50,000 Tennessee fans there compared to a smattering of Iowa fans. And after the game, when the Tennessee players were celebrating with the fans and stuff, it was a great scene. It was a great scene. You would have thought Tennessee had won the SEC championship. Instead, they had won a 7th game of the year. But that just tells you how hungry the fans are, how ready they are for Tennessee to have success. And when it happens, they're going to explode. They're going to enjoy it. And I think Butch Jones is a guy that can get them there. And again, we'll see. We'll see when it's going to happen. I've compared this to golf. There was a guy named Phil Mickelson that was having trouble winning a major. Once he finally won a major in 2004 at the Masters, boom, he took off and he won 4 more. Jason Day more recently couldn't get over the hump. He had 10 top 10 appearances in majors. He finally won the PGA, and boom, he's been the best golfer in the world over the last 2 months. I think once Tennessee gets over that hump with a big win, I think they can take off. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to win a bunch of SEC titles, but I think it means they'll consistently contend for the East Division of the SEC and then get back to where they're winning 9-10 games on a regular basis. So, but you got to make that first big step, and we'll see if Tennessee can get that done this weekend. I'll tell you what, I'll stop there. If anybody's got any questions about any sports, yes, sir.
Hey, Jimmy, let's talk about leadership and bulletin board material. The Oklahoma-Tennessee game, the striker.
Yes.
We did not win that game, and that guy was a clown. That's number one. Number two, I wonder how good a leader Josh Dobbs is, because the Oklahoma quarterback basically won that game for Oklahoma by just being a great leader. What do you think about that?
On Eric Stryker, I think what he said may be one reason Tennessee led 17-0. I think they were fired up and ready to get out there. And Stryker didn't do a great deal in that game. He was very disruptive the year before. Tennessee had a pretty good plan against him this time. He's a very good player, no doubt about it. He gave in a bowl game a couple of years ago against Alabama, he gave him fits. He gave Tennessee fits last year. And he's pretty excitable, as you know. And there was a little confrontation, a little discussion with Butch Jones and Stryker after that game, where Stryker was taunting the Tennessee fans a little bit. As far as Dobbs' leadership, I think Dobbs is a good leader. I think he's a good leader. What I don't know is whether or not he is going to be a good, effective quarterback against the best defenses that he faces. He's really good against Iowa. He's really good against South Carolina and Kentucky and Bowling Green. He, in my opinion, over the last 2 years, he's faced 2 really good defenses. One was Missouri last year, and he wasn't very effective. The other one was Oklahoma, and he wasn't very effective. He was 13 out of 31 against Oklahoma. Now, I don't think that's all his fault. One, Tennessee's offensive line's not very good. It doesn't matter against about 8 teams that they play, but there are 4 or so teams that they play where it does matter. Oklahoma, Florida, Alabama are among those 3 where it will matter how that offensive line plays. The zone read scheme that Tennessee runs is supposed to be an equalizer to an average offensive line against a strong opponent. Tennessee this year has not run that many zone read plays. A lot of those plays have been predetermined runs, either the keep by the quarterback or the handoff. They can't do that against Florida. They're going to have to run more zone read and keep them off balance, where it's a true zone read that either Dobbs is going to keep it or he's going to hand off. But I think that's one of the things that they have to do. So to me, a lot of it gets down to the execution of the offense. Can Dobbs get that done against the better defensive teams Tennessee plays? To me, he still has to prove that. Now, I remember a lot of people saying, and I put myself in this camp as well. I felt like if Dobbs had played against Florida last year, I think Tennessee would beat him. Okay, now he has a chance to prove it. Now he is going to be the guy. And this is a very good Florida defense that is challenged on offense, just like it was a year ago. So can Dobbs make enough plays to get Tennessee over the hump? We'll see. Yes, sir.
Jimmy, you talked about the UT fan base and how many folks are there for Oklahoma, how they stuck in there so well, Western Carolina, all that. What does your crystal ball tell you may happen as far as the fan base in Butch if Tennessee loses tomorrow?
Oh, they'll be jumping off the Henley Street Bridge. This is, and that's one reason I think it's a must-win for him. I think if Tennessee loses, first off, I don't see them competing for the East Division. Secondly, I see that a lot of the fan base jumping off the bandwagon. I do. A very small percentage jumped after the Oklahoma game. We had a couple of callers to our Sunday morning show that felt like they need to make a change for the head coach because he's not going to get them there. One guy compared him to Derek Dooley, and he did it in this way. He said, but this is a fact. He said that the first 27 games, Derek Dooley's record was 13-14. After the first 27 games, Butch Jones's record is 13-14. So he's saying you got the same coach. Okay, my argument would be a couple of things. One is, I think Butch Jones inherited a much worse situation than Derek Dooley inherited. Now, what Dooley inherited wasn't very good, but it was worse because of the roster mismanagement, the lack of talent that Dooley brought in. The other thing is this. I remember when Bill Battle started at Tennessee, in his first 3 years, he was 31-6. Johnny Major's first 3 years, he was a game under 500. Who do you think was the better coach? It was Johnny Majors. But Battle got off to a great start because of what he inherited. And then when he got all his players in, the program started going downhill. So don't take the first 27 games and say that proves this coach is the same as that coach. I don't buy that. But there have been some that have been upset about it. And if Tennessee doesn't beat Florida, there'll be a lot of people that'll be angry about it, and they'll start questioning Butch Jones and where this program's going. Again, I think Tennessee is going to get there. I'm just not sure which game it's going to be that catapults them forward. Yes, sir.
What about one of the things that bothers me is the receivers. We play about 10 receivers. It seems like why don't we play 4 or 5 good receivers, keep them in rhythm during the game? Why don't we rotate so many receivers in and out?
Yeah, the question is, why does Tennessee rotate as many as 10 receivers and not their top 4 or 5 receivers? I'm kind of in the camp where you stay with your best receivers. I asked Butch Jones that very question this week, and he said that they do these reps in practice. They do have a chemistry that's built up. And when you run a hurry-up offense, you've got receivers that are running down the field quicker, and you're running snaps faster, and they'll get winded. And so you need to have substitutions at the receiver position. That's what Butch Jones said. But I tell you what, if I got an Amari Cooper, he's staying on the field a lot. If I got a Laquan Treadwell, he's staying on the field a lot. Now, Tennessee doesn't have one of those, but I still think that it can affect the passing game because I think that does have – I don't know how a quarterback can have good chemistry with 10 receivers. I'm not sure how they can. But here's the other thing, too. I think the most underachieving unit in Tennessee right now are the receivers. I don't think they're beating press coverage. I don't think they're getting much separation in their routes. And so they have not played as well as I thought. Actually, the best thing they're doing right now is blocking. But they have got to do a better job. There are 3 things that have affected Tennessee's pass game so far. One's the receivers not playing to their ability, in my opinion. The other one is the pass protection. It's a bit shaky with this offensive line. And the other one is Dobbs has not been consistently accurate. The worst pass Dobbs throws is downfield. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, they got to throw it downfield. And I do think they have to have success doing that. But that's the worst pass he throws. Anything outside of 30 yards, he's not real accurate with that. And I think that's one reason Tennessee has shied away from that. Yes, sir.
On that, it's a good point on that. I watched Florida's defense, especially the secondary, that Kentucky game on TV. Man, those guys are so quick and physical. I mean, that gets back to that point. I think that's the key. That, to me, is the key to the game. Separation of the receivers. Florida giving them time.
I think that is going to be a key to the game is Tennessee's receivers' ability to get separation and beat press coverage against Florida. If Tennessee cannot have success in the pass game, then their run game is going to have more trouble succeeding because Florida's going to load the box. Now, this has been a Florida formula for years. I heard people say, well, Oklahoma showed the blueprint. Florida's been showing the blueprint. They press coverage and they load the box. And that's one reason Tennessee in recent years hasn't been successful. During this 10-game losing streak that Tennessee has against Florida, Tennessee has averaged 15.2 points a game. That's it during that streak. Florida's averaged about 30 points a game. So it's been about a 2-to-1 ratio on the scoring with this series in the last 10 years. But I think that's a key element for Tennessee. Florida's secondary is really good. There's not a better cornerback in the country than Vernon Hargraves III. even though Jalen Tabor's out, they've got other really good defensive backs. Brian Poole's a really good player. They've got a lot of them. And McGee at safety is a really good player. They've got some good personnel. They've got another guy named Kenyu Neal, Neal. He's a good player. So they've got a lot of good defensive backs, and that's going to be a big challenge for Tennessee, is beating that press coverage and being able to make some plays at receiver. And I think that is one of the big keys to the game. Yes, sir.
What is your opinion of Jones and his game day effort?
As a game day coach?
Yeah, as a game day coach.
I think as a game day coach, based on what I've seen at Tennessee, I think he's okay. Being okay is not real good in this league.
Do you think he's too conservative? Is he too conservative?
I think he is conservative. Is he too conservative? It's an interesting question. I think to date he has been a little bit too conservative. It's funny. As I watched Tennessee with 4th and 4 inches against Oklahoma, so they kick a field goal. I'd have gone for it. But they kicked a field goal, and so then I watched Florida play Kentucky, and Florida is on the 1-yard line, and it's 4th down early in the game. It was either first or second possession. They go for it, score a touchdown, and that touchdown helped propel them to a win. I think sometimes he has a little bit of a play not to lose mentality instead of playing to win. I thought last year they got ultra conservative against Florida with that 9-0 lead. I think they felt like there's no way Florida's going to score. They went into a shell. It opened the door for Florida to come back. Some of that went on against Oklahoma, but I will differ from people with this. I've heard people say, well, they needed to run the clock in the 4th quarter. Tennessee didn't have the ball in the 4th quarter. Oklahoma did. Oklahoma ran 18-play drive, 15-play drive, and not only that, they had penalties in there too. So Oklahoma ran about 34, 35 plays in the 4th quarter. Tennessee ran 5 until the last kneel down. That was it. So now, and it's sort of funny. People say they should have been running the game clock. Run it down. Okay. Well, the same people that said that said they're being too conservative. Well, you can't have it both ways. If you're running the clock down, you're trying to be conservative, run the clock. But if you want them to step on the pedal and score more points, then you're going up tempo. And that's what Tennessee did for the 3rd quarter. So, and Tennessee came out in the second half. They had a 31-yard run. They had a 20-yard pass. They looked good, and then they missed a field goal. And then they had a tight end that dropped a pass on about the 10-yard line. There were so many different plays that if Tennessee makes it, they win the game. If they sacked Baker Mayfield on one of those 7 misses they had, they could have won the game. And Baker Mayfield's pretty good. Now, the first 3 quarters, he was 8 out of 25. And I'm like, they need to change quarterbacks. Well, they didn't. In the 4th quarter, he was 11 out of 14. And then last week, I think he was 32 out of 38 for something like 479 yards. The guy got hot against Tennessee in the 4th quarter. He carried that over. I think he's a really good quarterback. So, but anyway, as far as the conservative part of it, I remember years ago, Bobby Bowden made a comment. He said, I finally figured out what the big game is. The big game is the one you lose. That's the big game. Well, I think I figured out when you're supposed to be conservative and when you're not. It's okay when you win, but if you lose, then you did it wrong. You either should have been more conservative or you should have gone for the jugular, one of the two. But that's the balancing act that you have from a team. Yes, sir.
If I can change that just 1 second and ask a basketball question.
Yes, sir.
The time that you've spent with Rick Barnes and what you've seen so far, what do you think?
Time I spent with Rick Barnes, I really like Rick Barnes. I think it was a good hire. He took Texas to something like, in his 17 or so years, they were in the NCAA tournament 16 times. He got them to a Final Four. The thing that he has to do here is recruit, and recruit really well. They brought in 4 prospects for the Oklahoma game. They got a commitment from 1. Another kid committed to Virginia Commonwealth. I think they're on the, and by the way, that coach used to be at Chattanooga, UT Chattanooga. His name is Will Wade. 2 others out of that group they're trying to get. That's going to be the key, though, is getting some players in here. It was interesting. I asked him, I said, the way this thing ended at Texas, does that put more fire in your belly? He said, no. He said, I had fire in my belly. I didn't need that to happen for me to have more fire. But he said, I want to get Tennessee back to where it should be, and that's consistently winning. I really like his staff. Desmond Oliver, I think, is a really good hire. Rob Lanier, I had a chance to interview him. I've written a story for Inside Tennessee Basketball, the magazine that comes out about Rob Lanier, and his background is fascinating. He grew up in Buffalo. His mom is white, and he's got 2 other brothers. And he said that it was a very difficult situation. They were in public housing, and he said his mom took a whole lot of grief from the folks at public housing, and she had to be a very tough woman. And he said it was a big challenge for him. He grew up around drugs. He had a brother that was in jail. He had another brother that died at an early age. And he said at 10 years old, he's sitting there and there's drugs and stuff going on all around him. And he said, I made the right decisions. He said to not go down that path. And I said, did that have something to do with your older brothers getting in trouble? He said, no. He said, it was just instincts. I went on instincts. But he was able to get out of there. He went to St. Bonaventure. He is related to Bob Lanier, but they don't really have a relationship. So he goes to St. Bonaventure as a point guard. He then embarks on a coaching career. He's done very well. He was at Florida. He was at Texas. He was a head coach at Siena for 4 years. He got fired there after 4 years. But I think he's a great assistant coach. And I said, well, you want to be a head coach one day? He said, yeah, I do. He said, but not for 5 years. I said, why 5 years? He said, I have a daughter that's in the 7th grade. I don't want to displace her. When she graduates from high school, then I'll be ready to go and be a head coach. But family's important to me. He said, I've been in this town for 3 months. He said, the basketball passion is unbelievable. He said, I was at Texas, I was in Florida, and they can't touch Tennessee for the passion among the fan base. And he said, that's why I want to be here, and that's why I wanted to succeed at Tennessee. And you count on it. I'll be here for 5 years. And I thought that was a very interesting answer from Rob Lanier. But I do think Rick Barnes will do a good job. But in basketball, even more so in my opinion than football, it's so much about recruiting. You can get 2 great players and you can have a heck of a basketball team. It takes more than 2 great players in football to be really good. And so I think that's what it's going to be about. But I think Barnes will do a good job.
Appreciate it. We've got a commemorative paperweight on your behalf. All right. Rotary Club of Bearden. And also, we donate a book to Pond Gap Elementary School on your behalf. If you would sign that card, and we'll put it in their library for them.
What's the time?